The people you admire are not random, and your brain is rewiring itself around them. But most people have no idea this is even happening. My name is Caitlin Gilbride, and I break down the neuroscience of self-improvement. And today we're diving into why you're drawn to certain people and what that does to your brain. So first, let's talk about something called mirror neurons. In the 1990s, a team of Italian researchers led by Gianmarco Rizziati was studying monkeys about mirror neurons. They basically had electrodes in the monkey's brain that was synced up, and they were able to see how their neurons were firing when they were observing other monkeys. And the fascinating thing here is when a monkey grabbed a peanut, they saw that the same neurons fired from the monkey watching the other monkey grabbing a peanut. So basically saying that your brain is mirroring other people of what they're doing as if you're doing it yourself. It's basically changed everything we knew about learning, admiration, and empathy. They learned that mirror neurons fire when you do an action and also when you watch someone do an action. Your brain is basically stimulating what it sees. For example, when you watch Kobe Bryant shoot a shot, your motor cortex basically activates as if you are shooting a shot. When you watch a great speaker in a room, your brain is basically thinking of you speaking in a room. You're not just passively consuming, you're neurologically practicing. And when you admire someone, the closer you pay attention. You study their movements, their patterns, their behavior. And the more you observe, the more of your mirror neurons that fire. So admiration isn't just emotional, it's active brain training. You are literally building the neural pathways for your behaviors that you're observing. This is why picking a role model isn't just generic advice. It is actually going to help you figure out where you want to go in life and what kind of person you want to be. Your brain learns by imitation, and admiration is basically what drives you to want to understand someone at the most intimate level. So now let's talk about the reticular activating system. Your reticular activating system is basically a bunch of neurons in your brainstem. It is basically your brain's filter of what information is important, what information it cares about. It is your processing system. Basically activates which information gets put into your consciousness of what you're truly aware of in the present and what gets ignored. And every second, your brain is bombarded with a bunch of sensory information of all of your surrounding environment. And the thing is, you can't just process it all. So your reticular activating system basically filters the information. So this is how admiration on your RAS system works together. So basically, when you decide that someone is worth admiration, your RAS programs it. It starts filtering for anything related to the person or the quantities that you admire in someone. So you start to notice their behavior, how they act, what they wear, what they dress like, how they talk, like all of these things. Things you would have missed before become much more obvious. This also goes when you like someone or you have a crush on someone. You are much more aware of what they're doing, who they're talking to, what they're doing. Like they are your central focus. That is what your RAS system is focusing on. So now your brain is basically tuned to absorb everything about them. Your RAS is actively hunting for patterns to learn from them. So this is why it's so important to be careful about who you're admiring and who you are putting your attention on, or the people you surround yourself with, because you are actively becoming like them. You are adopting their behaviors, their patterns. This is why people preach so often, protect your peace, like have a small circle, be really selective about who you spend your time with, because you actually become them. For example, if you have friends who are short-term thinkers or like instant gratification, you're much more likely to be drawn to those things. If you have friends that have hobbies like, skiing, you're more likely to go skiing. Like it's things like that. If you admire, really intelligent people or funny people or kind people, you're much more likely to be drawn to them and become friends with those kind of people because those are things you admire. If you are really into fashion or, looks or intelligence, those are certain traits you're going to be admired to. So if you're really into fashion, you're going to find other people that, dress well, who are really into, different types of fashion that you can clearly see, and you're much more likely to want to be friends with them or talk to them. Now let's talk about the dopamine admiration loop. When you admire someone, your brain releases dopamine, which is basically, your happy hormone that you've probably heard of before. It is basically your neurotransmitter that is responsible for motivation, reward, and, your goals, your what you're driven to, what you're attracted to. Admiration triggers your ventral tegmental area, which I'm going to be referring to as your VTA. And this basically projects your dopamine to your prefrontal cortex, which is the main part of your brain, like the biggest part of your brain that's responsible for like critical thinking and, a lot of your behavior and your higher level of thinking. It is also responsible for your planning and your decision making. VTA also projects dopamine to your nucleus accumbens, which is basically your part of your brain that is responsible for motivation and reward. So the whole point of this is that admiration doesn't just make you feel good. It basically wants you to act on it. It wants you to act on what you're admiring. And it basically fuels your ambition of the traits that you want to have. And I think the thing that people don't understand is that dopamine isn't just about pleasure, it's also about pursuit. It makes you want to act on certain things that make you feel good. It basically can fuel ambition. And if you train it long enough to, have delayed gratification, like your goals or your dreams, you actually get a bigger dopamine hit than, let's say, like if I'm scrolling in TikTok and, I'm just scrolling mindlessly, like that doesn't, sure, you get a little bit of dopamine, but it's not like, it's basically short-term gratification rather than long-term gratification, which is honestly much more rewarding. And it releases a lot more dopamine when you have challenge and when you actually, have to work for what you want. So basically, dopamine is a chemical saying that that is worth working towards. That is something I want to become. That is something I want. For example, when you admire someone's discipline, or let's say they go to the gym every day, you're thinking to yourself, wow, I want to be capable of that. I want to be like that person. And dopamine is your driver to that. It is pushing you to want to do that. It is like what makes you want to take action in certain things. This is why admiration can be more powerful than abstract goals. Because you're not actually making any progress to being, I want to be successful by saying that arbitrary statement. You don't even know what that means. You don't even know the steps you want to break down to achieve that success. But if you change it and be like, I want to be successful like Kobe Bryant. I want to be, a star basketball player. Then you actually have like, oh, Kobe Bryant does basketball. He's super disciplined. He wakes up at 5 a.m. and, shoots shots for like 3 hours. Then it's like more, your brain is like, oh, like that is more concrete of what that means than saying, I want to be successful. You're like, well, what does that mean? But if you say, I want to be like Kobe Bryant, then you know the traits that person has, like the type of person you want to be. It basically gives your brain a more concrete model of the person you want to be, of like, it's easier to shape your identity around other people you admire. Here's the caveat. You want to admire the process, not just the outcome. For example, my example about Kobe, you can say, oh, I want to be like Kobe Bryant, but I'll only be happy when I'm like Kobe Bryant. Obviously, that is going to take years. It could be a miracle that you will never really be Kobe Bryant, right? Everyone is, individualistic. Everyone is different. Everyone has different minds. Like, you could never truly be like someone else. But when you admire the process, the work, the dedication it takes to get to that level to be the best, you start to have joy in the process. It's all about enjoying the journey. And it's not a sprint. It is a marathon. Regardless if you want to be the best in anything, in art, in academics, in science, in your field of whatever field you're in, it takes a lot of time and it is a long process. And it is even not truly rewarding if you just automatically get it, because you didn't have to go through any of the hurt, the pain, the challenge of it. So if you only admire the end result, like let's say the money, the fame, the status, when you don't immediately get it, first of all, you're going to want to give up because you're like, wow, I made this YouTube video. Why am I not famous yet? Because you just started. Your dopamine spikes at the idea of getting money or fame, but you don't actually want to put any of the work in to get it. And that's when you crash, when you don't see immediate results that your brain thinks it should be getting, which is why it's really important to reframe your idea of your goals. For example, let's say I want to have a successful YouTube channel. I'm not going to be thinking, oh, I'll only be happy when I get 1 million followers, or if I get 10,000 followers, or if I get, 10K likes. You have to think, I enjoy talking about these things. I don't even care. If there's just one person out there listening to my videos that I helped, that is enough for me. You know what I mean? You have to have a purpose of like, I'm okay not being famous. I'm okay regardless of the outcome because I enjoy the process. I enjoy what I'm talking about. Because when you admire the process, the discipline, the thinking, the craft that goes behind it, your dopamine is much more sustainable over the long term. You don't need the immediate, reward, the money, because you enjoy the process. You enjoy crafting, be creative, putting in the effort to make videos like this. You enjoy the process rather than I need instant gratification. And once you can train your brain from instant gratification into delayed gratification is when you can truly control your dopamine, control your emotions, and truly find peace with life. So every time you practice what the people you admire, your heroes, your people you look up to, for example, Kobe or Albert Einstein, and you do similar things to what they do, your brain rewards you. let's say I look up to some YouTubers like Mr. Beast and I want to be like Mr. Beast, right? And I start making videos every day, just like he does. Or maybe it's a different topic, but same thing. I make videos and then I get, delayed gratification because I'm like, wow, I'm doing things that I admire in people and that I want to be like, and it makes you feel good. So I think the most important thing is to admire how they work, how the people you look up to function, how they behave, how they work, not their goals, not what they've achieved, but how they achieved it. What they did every single day, the habits, the behaviors they did, how they got to there. For example, going back to Kobe Bryant, which has been my example this whole video, he woke up at 5 a.m., practiced for like 3 hours every day, every single day. I can admire his discipline. I can admire his work ethic. But I'm not going to be like, oh, wow, I wish I won a bunch of championships. Or like, I wish I was in the NBA. Like, you have to break it down into the steps of how they actually got to the end goal. And that is what keeps you going. Now let's talk about the difference between admiration and jealousy, because I think there's a huge difference between them. Admiration activates your prefrontal cortex, your ventricle striatum, and your mirror neuron system, which are things that we've all talked about. And it has this growth mindset of I can become like them. However, envy, jealousy activates a completely different system. It activates your amygdala, which is your fear threat detection center. It activates your anterior cingulate cortex, which is your pain processing. Yes, envy can physically hurt. And 3, it activates your dorsal striatum, which is basically your comparison, your competitiveness in your brain. So we can see that these are totally different parts of your brain being activated versus jealousy versus admiration. So I think that is really important to clear up that there is a huge difference between the two. Because envy activates, oh, they have what I want. I don't have what that. It's like a threat response. It's like, oh, they have the thing I want. Why don't I have that? I deserve that. It is a totally different thing than I admire that in someone else. So there's this research done by this researcher called Kashi Hashi in 2009, where he used MRI scans, and he basically showed that when people feel envy, their anterior cingulate cortex lights up, which is the part that actually processes physical pain, which I thought was fascinating. So basically, when you feel envy, you actually feel pain because you do not have that thing that they have. Envy can literally hurt. For example, let's think of when you have a crush, right? And you see that your friend is getting all their attention, right? And that your crush likes your friend, and you feel jealousy, you feel envy, you feel actually hurt because you're like, wow, I can't believe my friend would talk to my crush. Like, you feel hurt, you feel physical pain. And I'm sure a lot of us have felt, this way when your crush doesn't like you and they like your friend, or for example, you can actually feel real pain. And what's even more interesting about this study is when they saw that the envy person, or the person that they envied, failed, their ventral striatum basically activated, which is your reward center. It felt good when the person you envied failed, which I thought this was so interesting. Basically, they felt pleasure at someone else's loss. Admiration, on the other hand, showed activation in regions associated with learning and motivation. There was no pain. It was basically just a drive to improve. So let's talk about how to check yourself, whether you're feeling envy or admiration. Ask yourself, when you see a person who succeeds, do you say, I want to be like them, I admire them, or I wish I had that? Do you feel inspired or do you feel bitter? Inspired is admiration. Your brain is in learning mode. Your brain is mirroring their neurons, saying, I want to be like that person. Whereas bitter equals envy. Your brain is in threat mode. It feels physically hurt at the fact that they got something that you want. So if you feel envy, you can shift the way you're thinking about it, your thought process behind this, your neurons and how they're activating. You have to shift your focus. This means stop comparing the outcomes between yourself. Stop comparing yourself to other people. Start studying the process of how they got the thing that you want. This could also be, I know crushes are so arbitrary, right? But let's say your friend, let's go back to the example of your friend started, talking to your crush, and your crush really liked them. Why did this happen? Is your friend super charismatic? Is she super charming? Is she funny? What about your friend? Is she beautiful? Does she dress nice? Like, I know it's super arbitrary to be like, oh, why is someone attracted to someone? But this is something you can observe. This is a behavior you can observe. And rather than being jealous, you can look at their behavior. How are they acting? How are they different from you? And this is how you can actually start setting the process of why you feel envy, why you feel jealous. And I know that can be really hard to do, to actually accept, wow, I'm not charismatic, or I'm not as funny as them, or maybe I don't dress as nice as them. And I know that can be really hard to accept. But the faster you can accept that, the faster you can learn to become better. So now that we know that our brain changes on what we observe repeatedly, let's talk about neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is your brain's ability to rewire itself. It basically forms new neural connections in between neurons based on experience. Every time you observe someone you admire, your neurons are rewiring itself to associate yourself with that behavior. And over time, those pathways become your default behavior, your default response. And what's fascinating is every 80 days, your brain is rewiring its neurons constantly. So every 80 days, you can have completely different behaviors, completely different traits than you used to have, based on the people you're surrounded by, based on your experiences, your behaviors, your actions, your habits, all of this. Your brain is constantly rewiring its neurons. This is also coming back to the idea of why people say you become who you spend your time with, because you literally do. For example, I was a completely different person in high school from when I am now. High school, I played basketball. That was my whole thing. I didn't talk about any of this stuff. I didn't really read that much. I wasn't really interested in science or neuroscience or psychology. Like, basketball is my life. Time skip to 4 years later, after college, I'm a completely different person. I read all the time. I listen to podcasts. I read articles. I'm doing research at Berkeley. Like, I am such a different person. I am, because of how my behaviors, my habit, my environment, the people I was surrounded by changed and shifted so much. Let's talk about the Hebbian principle, which is the idea that when neurons fire together, they wire together. When you repeatedly watch someone, under composure, or someone you admire, speaking well, or, keeping their cool, as you could say, your mirror neurons are firing. And when you try to do the same thing, or, replicate what they were doing in your own life, those same neurons fire again. The whole idea, fire together, wire together. And this is one of the most powerful tools for self-transformation. If you really want to think strategically, study some of the most successful people, the masters of, strategy, obsessively. If you want discipline, surround yourself with people who are super disciplined, and your brain will adapt. Let's say you want to be the best salesman ever, right? Go find really good salesmen. Go find the best people in business. Become close with them. Copy their habits, learn everything they're doing, and that is how you become the best. That is why it is so important to surround yourself with people who are better than you, so you can grow and become better than you. Because if you're surrounded by people who you don't really want to be, who are, less of the kind of person you want to be, you'll never get better. You'll never grow. You'll never learn from them. And that's why it's important to feel uncomfortable when you feel like, oh, I'm not the best person in the room, or I'm the stupidest in the room, or like, I'm not the best at business in the room. You feel insecure, but you have to remember that is how you grow. That is how you become the best in the room, is to be surrounded by people who are better than you. And the most important part of this is repetition. You need repetition, or you're not going to achieve your goals. This could just be one book, one video, one podcast a day. That is all you need, consistently. You need sustained exposure to the habits you want to become the people you want to be like. And that is how neural pathways form. So here's what we learned. Your brain can't tell the difference between you doing something and you observing something. Your mirror neurons fire the same. 2, your RAS filters reality based on who you decide to admire. 3, dopamine fuels the pursuit of becoming like the people you admire, but only if you admire the process, not the outcome. 4, envy and admiration are completely different processes in your brain. One causes pain and resentment, the other one causes growth. And through neuroplasticity, sustained admiration literally rewires your brain on the qualities you study. Through neuroplasticity, sustained admiration literally rewires the brain towards the qualities you study. And here's the takeaway. Admiration isn't about worship. It is about strategic brain training. Pick someone worth studying and study their behaviors obsessively. Let your mirror neurons and your RAS do the rest. Your brain will adapt. You will become who you repeatedly observe and admire. So the real question is, who are you training to become? Thanks for watching. If this was valuable, please subscribe below for more videos about neuroscience and psychology and the science behind self-improvement. I really enjoyed making this video, and thank you so much for watching my first video.